it was the, would you take $500,000 or dinner with Jay-Z?
Give me $500,000 from Jay-Z.
Charleston White made national headlines after a surprise confrontation with Soulja Boy and his entourage in Miami. In a moment that quickly went viral, Charleston pulled out a can of mace and sprayed Soulja Boy and nearly a dozen of his crew members during what was allegedly an aggressive approach. The rapper had reportedly walked up wanting to talk, but Charleston saw it differently. He didn't wait to find out what would happen next. The move shocked both fans and critics who couldn't believe what they were seeing. Charleston, always unapologetic, justified his actions by saying he feared for his safety. He insisted that a dozen men approaching one man warranted defensive action, but many online viewed it as excessive, even theatrical. Still, Charleston basked in the attention, owning the moment in the most Charleston White way possible. He said it was a lesson to any rapper who thought he was just a loudmouth online. Real life, he claimed, would get real fast. Immediately after the Miami incident, Charleston didn't retreat. He doubled down. Hopping on Instagram Live, he recounted the entire encounter with vivid, mocking detail. He taunted Soulja Boy, claiming the rapper was left crying like a baby and stumbling in pain after the mace hit his face.
Come back and lean on him.
On Soulja?
Man, that nigga face had, he was drip kicking.
Charleston laughed, imitated the aftermath, and made it clear he had zero regrets about what he did. This stream wasn't just petty, it was scorched earth. He even said Soulja should thank him for not pulling out a gun instead. Fans watched in shock as Charleston glorified the attack like a scene from a movie. The video spread like wildfire, turning Charleston into a trending topic overnight. For better or worse, he knew how to turn violence into virality. And that made this one of his most infamous crash-outs yet. Charleston took things too far when he publicly insulted Boosie's son, Tootie Raw, and T.I.'s son, King Harris. He didn't just criticize their behavior, he straight up called them wannabe gangsters and little punks with silver spoons. What really ignited the fire was the way Charleston threatened to fight the teenage boys, claiming he'd meet them anywhere, anytime, and beat them senseless on camera. Charleston's comments were so bold and disrespectful that they forced both T.I. and Boosie to respond. T.I. in particular took to social media and said he wanted to have a man-to-man conversation with Charleston, but White wasn't interested in talking. He kept mocking King Harris's appearance and behavior, practically begging the kid to retaliate. This wasn't just beef, it was an adult publicly antagonizing teenagers, and the backlash was fierce. After King Harris appeared to challenge Charleston to a fight, Charleston did what he always does, flip the script. He started threatening to press charges, saying if anyone from the Harris family touched him, they'd be in jail by nightfall. This was part of his classic move: evoke, escalate, and then play the victim when it got real. The legal threat added another layer to the circus. Charleston painted himself as a law-abiding citizen who would call the police without hesitation. Fans were torn. Some thought he was smart for using the law as protection. Others thought he was a coward hiding behind police threats after instigating the drama. Either way, it was another crash out that ended with more chaos than resolution. Charleston White came for DJ Academics with sharp words and even sharper insults. He accused Academics of promoting fake street culture and glorifying violence that harmed young black men. Charleston even referred to him as a clown with a podcast who made money off the trauma of others, all while sitting comfortably behind a camera. The moment caught fire online, not just because of what Charleston said, but because he seemed to mean every word. He looked into the camera and said Academics was worse than the rappers he reported on. It wasn't just commentary, it was character assassination, and it worked. Academics eventually responded, but the internet had already taken sides. Charleston's crash out was messy, but it had enough truth in it to sting. Charleston's response didn't stop with accusations. He launched into a furious, profanity-laced Instagram Live where he promised to ruin Academics' credibility. He hinted at having personal dirt on the media figure and threatened to expose him for allegedly manipulating narratives for clout and money. The meltdown was pure spectacle. Charleston shouted at the camera, pacing around his house like a preacher on fire. It was uncomfortable, unpredictable, and impossible to look away from. By the end of it, viewers didn't know whether to laugh, report the stream, or just grab some popcorn. Either way, it was another classic Charleston crash out. Charleston White has long believed that many people in the industry are working against the community, and he had no problem accusing Wack 100 of exactly that. In a heated rant, he called Wack a hip-hop agent and an informant puppet for the elites. The statement wasn't just wild, it was dangerous in the circles Wack moves in. Calling someone an agent in street culture is a serious accusation, and Charleston knew it. But he didn't care. He said Wack was part of a system keeping young black men trapped in entertainment and prison pipelines. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. Charleston was now in a war with one of the most connected men in the game. Charleston claimed that he had secret phone calls recorded between him and Wack 100, and that he'd release them if Wack ever pushed too far. This threat wasn't backed by evidence, but the internet didn't care. The potential for leaked calls sent everyone scrambling. This wasn't just beef, it was psychological warfare. Charleston played a dangerous game, one that could have easily ended in real consequences. Wack didn't take it lightly either, responding with his own threats. But Charleston was in too deep to back off now. His crash out had entered the next level. Charleston White stirred outrage when he publicly mocked the death of FBG Duck, a slain Chicago rapper, and disrespected Duck's grieving mother. In multiple videos, Charleston claimed these fallen rappers were not heroes, but street criminals who got what they signed up for. His lack of compassion, especially when aimed at a mother still mourning her son, turned fans and critics alike against him. The controversy didn't end there. He doubled down, calling Duck's mother a clout chaser for working with media outlets to speak out about gun violence. The backlash was enormous, with many calling for Charleston to be banned from platforms entirely. But in true Charleston White fashion, he wore the hate as a badge of honor, saying he'd never glorify the demon culture of gang rap. Charleston's beef with Chicago rap extended to Lil Durk and his entire fan base. During a live stream, he said if any Durk fan tried to approach him in public, he'd immediately call the police and have them locked up. "I don't fight no more. I file charges," he boasted. The statement drew laughter from some and pure disgust from others. What made this crash stand out was the way he weaponized the legal system as a scare tactic. He wasn't just talking tough. He was threatening to snitch before anything even happened. In a culture where street code runs deep, Charleston flipped the rules upside down and made it clear he wasn't playing by them. His threats were part of a larger pattern: provoke, escalate, then hide behind the law. Charleston's explosive appearance on Say Cheese TV was supposed to be just another interview, but it turned into a disaster. Halfway through the conversation, Charleston became visibly agitated. He accused the host of asking setup questions and trying to make him look foolish on camera. The energy shifted fast, and so did Charleston's tone. Without warning, he stood up mid-interview and began shouting at the crew, saying they were playing with his name and trying to bait him into a meltdown. It worked. Viewers watched as the situation spiraled out of control. Charleston berated the staff and stormed out of the studio, proving once again that even a controlled setting couldn't contain him. After storming out of the Say Cheese interview, Charleston immediately went live on his phone outside the studio. Still fuming, he told fans the interviewer was a clout chaser trying to manipulate him with slick questions. His rant was loud, raw, and completely unfiltered. What made this moment so explosive was how quickly he shifted from guest to aggressor. Within minutes, Charleston flipped the narrative and positioned himself as the victim of a setup. He urged fans to stop trusting media platforms and vowed never to return. Once again, a routine opportunity turned into another headline-making crash-out. In one of his most controversial moments, Charleston White openly mocked George Floyd's death during the height of the Black Lives Matter protests. He called Floyd a dope fiend and claimed the movement was based on a lie. His comments were viewed as not only tone-deaf, but dangerously divisive at a time when emotions across the country were already raw. The backlash came fast. Celebrities, activists, and everyday fans flooded Charleston's social media with outrage. But he didn't backtrack. He stood firm. He said he wasn't about to call someone a martyr just because they died on camera. For many, this crash out wasn't just reckless, it was unforgivable. After mocking Floyd, Charleston became a target for multiple activist groups who labeled him a danger to the community. Some even called for his removal from public platforms, saying his rhetoric gave cover to racists and minimized the systemic brutality of policing in America. Charleston, however, didn't care. He dared anyone to silence him, claiming he was the only one telling the truth. The crash out didn't just burn bridges, it exploded them. Even those who once found him entertaining began questioning whether he'd finally gone too far. But Charleston seemed to feed off the hate, growing louder with every new enemy. Charleston was invited to speak at a youth outreach panel, but instead of mentoring, he ended up berating a teenager in front of the audience. The teen, who challenged Charleston's views on gang culture, was met with a tirade of profanity, insults, and threats. It was a disturbing display of power imbalance, and the audience sat in stunned silence. Rather than use his platform to uplift, Charleston used it to dominate. His anger seemed more personal than productive, and the teen's family reportedly filed a complaint after the event. What should have been an empowering conversation turned into a cautionary tale of why some voices aren't ready for the spotlight. Following the outburst, the event organizers had no choice but to ask Charleston to leave. He refused at first, shouting that he had the right to speak his truth, but security eventually stepped in and escorted him off the premises. Attendees watched in disbelief as a supposed motivational figure turned into a full-blown meltdown. The footage of him being removed hit social media hours later. Instead of apologizing, Charleston mocked the organizers and said they were too soft for real talk. Another crash out, another scorched opportunity. He had once again turned a platform meant to inspire into his personal battleground. Charleston White raised eyebrows and blood pressure when he publicly disrespected Nipsey Hussle, calling him a fake activist and accusing him of glorifying gang culture. While most of the world was honoring Nipsey's legacy, Charleston decided to torch it. He claimed Nipsey didn't uplift the community, but rather perpetuated the same violence that eventually killed him. His comments enraged fans, especially in Los Angeles. What made this crash out so dangerous was its timing. Many were still mourning. But Charleston didn't care. He dared people to prove him wrong and doubled down by posting more inflammatory videos. He knew exactly how to stir the pot. Following the Nipsey comments, several West Coast promoters refused to book Charleston for events. Venues in Los Angeles began distancing themselves from him entirely. The word was out. Charleston White wasn't welcome in the city Nipsey called home. His brand of controversy had crossed into sacred territory. But even then, Charleston didn't flinch. He said the ban meant nothing to him and that he never needed LA's approval to speak his mind. While most entertainers would have tried to make peace, Charleston leaned into the chaos. Another crash out sealed in cement, burning bridges while the cameras rolled. Charleston White shocked his followers when he flashed a gun during an Instagram Live while arguing with a viewer. The situation escalated quickly from verbal jabs to Charleston suddenly reaching off-screen and returning with a handgun. He waved it in front of the camera, threatening to use it on anyone who tested him. The moment sparked immediate concern. Thousands watched live, and the clip was reposted across every major hip-hop platform. Critics said Charleston had finally gone too far, warning that one wrong move could turn his online antics into a tragedy. But Charleston remained defiant, saying he had every right to defend himself, online or in person. After the gun flashing incident, rumors began to swirl that local authorities were looking into the stream. Several watchdog groups reported the footage to police, fearing Charleston may have violated firearm or broadcasting laws. Though no formal charges were announced, the buzz alone was enough to spook sponsors and event organizers. Charleston dismissed the rumors as nothing but clout chasers snitching, but insiders said his team was quietly working damage control behind the scenes. The crash out had real-world consequences, whether Charleston admitted it or not. This wasn't just internet talk anymore. It was a sign that the game he was playing had stakes.